For instance, we've learned that the perpetrators of hate crimes come in all shapes and sizes. They could be white, they could be male, they could be white, they could be men, they could be white, they could be white males, and they could even, if you can believe it, they could even be white men. In a world filled with so many real, totally legitimate, not faked for attention and political narrative hate crimes, it's important to be watchful and remain vigilant. That's why I feel compelled to tell you all about the newest group that's going out there and committing these horrible hate crimes. They are part black, they live in a matriarchal society, they're extremely dangerous, and around them you should never relax, because you could find yourself on the receiving end of a lot of pain. Also, they're part yellow. They fly around and they pollinate flowers. They're bees. From Newsweek.com, quote, South Carolina mayor says yellow sticky substance on her car was sprayed by vandals. Police say it's just pollen. Evil, hateful white people have gotten so advanced with hate crimes, they're now out there impersonating Mother Nature when they do them. When will the horror end? This woman, this scholar, genius, and public servant predictably ran straight to the media and the police to regale them with the story of her victimhood in this horrible racial incident. When the police looked into it, I can only imagine their reaction upon seeing the vandalized cars in question and having to explain to this woman and her husband how springtime works. The funniest part, though, is that she and her husband are doubling down. They are rejecting the police explanation that this was pollen falling on her car and insisting that she was, in fact, attacked by evil racists. Remember, in clown country America, people like this become elected officials. We're going to take a look at America's most recent horrible, evil, super bad, terrible example of hate in today's video. This is a great example of what happens when people who aren't very smart aren't smart enough to understand how not smart they are. With so many hate incidents in the media, the majority of which are either fake or overblown, people sense that they can gain publicity, fame, and sometimes even money through GoFundMe by becoming a victim. In many cases, you can raise a ton of money by doing this. The allure of becoming a professional victim can compel some not very smart people to rush to the police and rush to the media and rush to fundraising sites with their story of victimhood before they run that story by people who could advise them on how to create a slightly more believable or compelling narrative. This is like when you take a baby and stand him up in the driver's seat of a car and let him pretend to turn the wheel, except a lot less adorable. The saga of Darnell Byrd McPherson and her experience in MAGA country is this case didn't make headlines in the same way that the Jussie Smollett case did. As unbelievable as the Smollett case was, the media desperately wanted to make it real, and as such, they were running wall-to-wall coverage trying to convince people that Smollett had actually been attacked. But the case of Miss Darnell Byrd McPherson is on a whole new level of things that definitely didn't happen. Most mainstream media outlets didn't report on this story at all. They didn't want to touch it, because they knew that if they reported it, it would be so obviously fake that it would further erode people's confidence in fake hate crime claims. One leftist news outlet that did take the bait was Newsweek, and we'll be referring to their article about the story in today's video. I'm really amazed by the literary straight face with which this reporter is able to tell the story. Somehow, he seems to be taking it seriously. The mayor of a South Carolina town believed she was the target of a hate crime after cars belonging to her and her husband were dusted with a mysterious yellow sticky substance. Local and state police investigated the claims made by Lamar Mayor Darnell Byrd McPherson, who reported that on February 7th at 10 p.m. local time, someone sprayed her 2017 Symphony Silver Hyundai Elantra Sport and her husband's soft-top 1998 Buick Roadmaster with a residue outside of their home. The material, she remembered, got all up in the grooves of her husband's gray sedan. White people really be out here inventing new solvents and sprays and adhesives and chemicals in order to keep a brother down. Let's assume for a moment that this actually happened, and she was in fact targeted by hateful, evil, racist, bigot people. One would assume that these vandals would at least then throw in at least an N-word or two here or there, make it believably racial. They would at least do a backwards 1599 Hail Hitler swastika or something at least. But she's not even alleging that. Just that these vandals partially recolored her cheap Korean sedan and her husband's garbage heap jalopy in a spotty shade of yellow. This is less KKK, more KRYLON. And the fact that her husband drives a 1998 Buick Roadmaster, really completes the mental image for me. When that vehicle was released 20 years ago, it was voted by Car and Driver as the vehicle best suited for robbing drug and liquor stores. The wagon edition was complimented for its large trunk storage space, perfect for hauling the bodies of snitch-ass nibbas or loading up with copies of your mixtape to sell at 2 a.m. in the 7-Eleven parking lot. Truly a car of the people. The material, she remembered, got all in the grooves of her husband's gray sedan. The mayor had recently returned to her home after a meeting in the larger city of Hartsville, about 22 miles north of Lamar. My husband went out to the car to get some things out of the garage, she told Newsweek. He said, "Somebody's painted your car." All right, are you ready for the big reveal, the shocking piece of forensic evidence that will prove once and for all that racism in America is alive and well? Here we go. South Carolina local and state police investigated the claims made by Lamar Mayor Darnell Byrd McPherson, who reported that on February 7th, someone sprayed her 2017 Hyundai Elantra Sport and her husband's 1998 Buick Roadmaster with a mysterious yellow sticky residue outside of their home. Somebody's painted your car. You know, I have a long history of doing ghetto fabulous paint jobs on crappy mid-90s American sedans, so I feel like I have a unique ability to comment on the veracity of this story. Consider, for example, the 1993 Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra I purchased last year for $360. 10 cans of orange Walmart spray paint, some gold spray paint for the wheels, and a new alternator later, and we were ready for riding around in style, blasting the GTA San Andreas soundtrack from the obnoxiously large Bluetooth speakers that we mounted in the freshly cut off trunk. Unfortunately, before embarking on an epic journey from Pullman, Washington down to Central Oregon, we didn't change the transmission fluid, and after 300,000 miles, the 90s GM transmission had had enough. So, after nearly clipping a line of cyclists in downtown Portland, we had to abandon our fantastic creation, complete with homoerotic cowboy slogans and InfoWars bumper stickers, at the Tigard, Oregon Walmart. Rest in peace. Press F for the Hot Hard Cowboy Saloon. All of this is to say, I know a little bit about painting cars, and that is not paint. She recalled that the couple's neighbor, who had stopped by in his van to pick up some laundry, also chimed in. "Darnell, there's something on your car," she remembered him saying. They started rubbing it, and it was this yellow, sticky substance. So it was like, what is this? She and her husband and the neighbor started scraping all over their cars to rid what she described as a grainy substance akin to industrial spray foam used to patch concrete. It looked like little pebbles, she added. The big brainedness here is actually astounding. Yes, this yellow substance that happened to show up on your car, parked in your trees at the dawn of springtime, the first thing I think of is, industrial coating. It's definitely not, pollen and dirt. Last summer, I stayed the night at a hotel, and I parked my A3 directly behind a lawn sprinkler that sprayed hard water all over the car, so when it dried, it looked like it was covered in a weird white crust. Thinking back, I should have called the police and the media and alleged that a gang of libtards had targeted me, surrounded my car, and done big coombs all over the hood of my hatchback. I could have been a hero. Setting in was the deafening fear of an attack. I likened it as a hate crime because, number one, there's a history in our town of Lamar. The volunteer mayor of the town with approximately 980 constituents said, in the 1970s, racist acts were not uncommon in Lamar, where the mayor said burning crosses was once a pastime. According to a New York Times article dated March 4th, 1970, an estimated 200 white vigilante men holding axe handles, chains, and stones charged 3 school buses carrying black children and prevented them from heading to attend newly segregated schools. That should say newly desegregated schools. Great reporting, Newsweek. Many of the kids were injured by smashed bus window glass. Once the buses were emptied, the mob tipped 2 of them over before state police were able to restore order. If the safety of our children is not sacred to all men, then the entire process of law and the government is meaningless, Governor Robert E. McNair declared afterward. The memories of the past were front and center for Mayor McPherson upon seeing her car defaced. It ignited some fear in my spirit, she said. My God, who would do that? It was something. It was just unnerving to me. Yeah, okay, let me stop you right there. I'll tell you who did this. It wasn't a roving gang of ex-KKK racial vandals looking for a black person's car to target. And even if that had been the case, why would they use expensive industrial concrete sealant and not, 98-cent cans of spray paint you can buy at Walmart? The suspect you're looking for looks less like this and more like this. And his conspirators are these guys. And this guy, too. There's no way these people have lived in the South for as long as they allegedly have and not seen pollen on a car before. There's no way these people believed that they were actually the victims of a hate crime. Of course, like nearly every alleged hate crime we hear about in the media, this is a total hoax. The report went on to detail how the mayor and her husband streaked a finger over the tarnished parts surfacing the car and realized it was not paint and the substance could be removed with a finger, similar to pollen. She explained in the interview with Newsweek that there were no words or symbols drawn on the cars. The cars were parked in the street near the end of the couple's driveway, a block and a half from Lamar's downtown. To me, that was a message, she said. A message to what? Not park your car in front of trees? To park your car in the garage to protect it from the elements? To hose your car off in the morning before you leave for work? Yeah, racists are well known for working in conjunction with Big Water to target black people with pollen on their cars so they're forced to rinse their cars in the morning and use more water. That is the conspiracy. You're onto something. The mayor is hard-pressed to understand why she was targeted. I have a good reputation, she said. I've never been subjected to something like this. Both cars were rigorously cleaned the day after the incident, and therefore a sample of the substance, whatever it was not preserved. The substance wasn't saved, and the cars were actually cleaned, pressure washed twice. There was no substance, so they didn't have it for the investigation, argued McPherson. Yes, I'm sure the forensics lab would have been all over that one, working incessantly, night and day, burning the midnight oil to try to figure out this new racist chemical being used to target people's cars. Actually, in the clown country that we live in, I'm sure they probably would have been. And the Justice Department would have been all over that. Darlington County Sheriff's Office Lieutenant Robbie Kilgo explained that an investigation was opened to determine what the substance was on both cars. We found it to be pollen, Kilgo explained in an interview with Newsweek. There was no reason for us to collect a sample. The report that was taken included details of an examination by two sheriff's officials, a sergeant and a deputy, immediately came to the conclusion that the substance had a yellowish tint to it and that it's a type of powder similar to pollen. Though the possibility was raised that the car's mysterious coating could have been pollen and not the result of foul play, McPherson remained convinced someone was behind it. It's something, she said. Something that sticky that stuck to my car and took 2 different solutions to get it off. Kilgo explained that once the mayor was intent she had been attacked, the local agency referred the matter to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, or SLED. Due to the suspicion from her of being a hate crime, we couldn't say no, he said. The report added that the mayor also had a possible suspect in mind at the time of the incident. What, a B? Barry Benson? There's a police officer who came to me and said, there's rumors out there that they're going to assassinate you, the mayor recounted. She had asked the local law enforcement to file a complaint about the purported death threat as well. That's a federal crime, she said she told the officer at the time. Yes, I'm certain that really happened. This story is a total joke, and the fact that 2 law enforcement agencies' time and resources had to be wasted to satiate the ego and anti-white political objectives of this woman is surreal. This is not the kind of thing that happens in a serious country. This is what happens in countries that are actually 2 clowns standing on each other's shoulders, wearing a trench coat and pretending to still be a real country. You want to laugh because of how ridiculous this is. I mean, you have to. Pollen falls indiscriminately on everybody's car. Pollen has no racial bias. This black family gets pollen on their cars, and they call the media and the police in an attempt to manufacture a hate crime with themselves center stage as the victims. It's so silly, but at the same time, this is a blood libel against white people. She's making a baseless accusation that she was victimized, presumably by whites, in an attempt to gin up anti-white political sentiment. That element of the story shouldn't just be laughed off. What we're seeing in the Jussie Smollett case, to this case, to the various other hate hoaxes across the country, at schools, universities, etc., is a desperate attempt, a desperate desire by so many people to be victimized by white people. People are so desperate to be victimized by whitey that they're willing to deface their own property, injure themselves, paint swastikas on their own synagogue, all in an attempt to gin up anti-white sentiment, and make white people look like hateful, evil bigots. Cases like this, obviously fake hate incidents, need to be talked about and amplified because they further erode public confidence in hate crime culture. And that totally disarms a major vector of anti-white politics. Until we accomplish that, you can find me out in the parking lot, armed with industrial solvent, working on the paint job on my next custom epic gamer mobile.